Welcome to Ecologic for the month of September. What a beautiful time of the year, still warm. Somewhat the rain has passed us, but tonight's topic is dealing with the flood. Guy Cormier has been a very important part. He's the parish president of St. Martin Parish, and he pulled together a meeting with the Corps and 7 other parish presidents, all of whom asked the Corps for the emergency investigation of this flood and how we can deal with lowering stages. And maybe that's something that's not doable, but if it is doable, shame on us for not doing it. So guys played a major role in making this happen, and so we're here to thank you guys. So share with us your thoughts. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. I think we need to take a look at this flood that just happened as a worst case scenario type situation, not anything that we probably would see over and over again. Some people calling this a 500-year flood, some people calling this a 1,000-year flood, but either way, even if it's a 100-year flood or a 200-year flood, we need to take a look at what we've seen in the last 43 days and maybe just document it and talk about it amongst different parishes and get the Corps engineer involved to possibly see if there's some type of solution. And at the end of the day, if the Corps comes back and we study this, the parishes, which we call in, I guess, the Tesh-Vermilion watershed area, and it comes back and says there's not a whole bunch can be done, at least we know that. So we learned a lot as we kind of watched the last 43 days and how it played out. In St. Martin Parish, for example, we had one rain event, started on the 12th and lasted for about 48 hours. Then about 2 days after that, we got another 6 inches of rain. But the majority of the problems we had were from the first 2 days of raining. And we received one rain event, but it caused 2 different floods. We had a flash flood that happened over the first day or 2, and then like 3 days afterwards, the night that 6-inch rain hit, coincidentally, the water was starting to back up on us from the Vermilion overflow in its banks. And it created us some problems for not days, but weeks. And I was visiting with some folks yesterday off of Aubrey-Ozan Road, which is right on the Lafayette, St. Martin line, and there's still water that's collected in some of those areas because the Vermilion is still dropping at a very slow rate. So we figured we'd at least have a conversation amongst ourselves and other parishes that at least play a part into the Tesh and the Vermilion watersheds. And so we invited St. Landry, St. Martin, Iberia, Vermilion, St. Mary to start talking about, and Lafayette, to start talking about what it is that we all saw during this event. Everybody saw something different. Of course, St. Mary didn't get the amount of rain we got, but all the water that, at least from the Barrow Channel against the Chapelai Basin levee and the Tesh, has to go towards them. So we wanted to include them. We called another meeting on October 24th, which is going to be coming up. I want to thank Mr. Howell for helping me put that together. We'll be having that meeting at Vermilionville here in Lafayette, just to kind of move it around. And we'll be inviting the parishes of Point Coupee and Iberville to participate with us as well, just so that we can start having a regional approach to what it is that we possibly would find. I think often we all get together, and I'm a part of the Acadiana Planning Commission, and the Acadiana Planning Commission deals a lot with transportation and how we move people from one area to the other. And we talk about transportation and roads and highways and how they start from one point and go to the next through this metropolitan planning organization that we have, but we don't talk about drainage. So it is my goal, I guess, that in the spring of next year when we start our legislative session, that I can get with a couple of senators and representatives and maybe formally create like an Acadiana regional drainage district so that we can do a couple things, start applying for funding to be able to get solutions for our problems, and number 2, just to be able to communicate amongst ourselves what's going on in our parishes. I don't want to do something in St. Martin Parish that's going to negatively impact another parish, and I don't think any other parish wants to do that. But there hasn't been a whole bunch of communication between the parishes when it comes to digging drainage canals. In fact, in the last 10 years or so, I just use one example in Lafayette Parish where they dug what they call Cypress Bayou. We call it Cypress Coulee, and it eventually dumps in the Cade area, 2 different locations. When it gets us to St. Martin Parish line, we call that Coulee La Salle. So in Lafayette, it's called Cypress Bayou, and our parish is called Coulee La Salle. But they dug that with no communication with us at all. And I just think that if they'd have had a little bit of communication with us, there's a possibility that we probably could have kept Highway 90 opened up, because the two areas in which it flooded were right where the project actually stopped, where Lafayette stopped the project against Highway 90 and didn't go any further. Not saying that we want them to come and dig in our parish, but if I'd have known that was gonna happen, we could have maybe applied for some funding to be able to just do our channel improvements a little bit past where they had done it, and bring it to those low spot areas that are made, or the way the topography of the land is, it's made to flow that way and hold there. And I really believe that even in a flash flooding situation over the first couple of days, that we probably could have kept Highway 90 open. I mean, we closed a major highway because of, I think, lack of planning. So,
Yeah, absolutely. 4
Yeah.
days, and 182 was closed. and
182 was
14
closed.
so-
Yeah, so we had, just in St. Martin Parish, we had Highway 96, which is the Terrace Highway, was closed. We had Decade Highway, Highway 92 was closed because of high water
Right.
being over those highways. We had Highway 353, which is the Cypress Island Highway, which was closed. We almost closed Highway 94, the Lafayette-Brobridge Highway, but the area in which the water was going over the road was it's an area where the state widened the road to put in a turn lane. So there was still about a lane and a half that was somewhat dry. So we put some barricades out, and we put some of the blinking signs to slow people down, but we were able to actually open that up. But if we would close that, and you lived in St. Martinville or even Parks, you'd have had to just drive all the way to Brobridge on 31 and 347, along the Test Ridge.
Test Ridge.
And climb on Interstate 10 to get to Lafayette, because everything else was closed because of the amount of rain that we caught.
It was just amazing. After our meeting there in St. Martin, we took the engineers and hydrologists up the Tesh all the way to Port Barry. That was not a flooded home on the Tesh Ridge.
Right.
It's just amazing that Tesh Ridge is so high and dry.
My brother-in-law is a helicopter pilot, owns 2 helicopters, and I was fortunate enough, as soon as the rain kind of slacked off on Sunday, we got in the air, and I was flying the parish more than one time a day. We'd go multiple times. If I went with him in the morning, I'd get a ride with somebody else in the afternoon, maybe another helicopter service. We had state police flying us around. I had another friend of mine who has a private helicopter who flew us around. So I was getting to see it from the air, and we'd always start in the Tesh right around St. Martin, where the Keystone Locks are. Mr. Howard, you familiar with that?
Right.
And we'd fly up the Tesh to the parish line up by St. Landry Parish, and I saw maybe 2 or 3 homes that had threatening water levels, homes that were built very close to the water's edge and maybe a little bit low. But as I know it, I think there's only 1, maybe 2 homes in the city of Brobridge that got a little bit of water in them on the Tesh. 1 in St. Martinville that I know of, and none anywhere else. So it proved to me when we fly every day that the Tesh Ridge is exactly what that is.
It's a
high-
real ridge.
It's
not
a real ridge. And when we would get up around the Sawmill Highway area, and you would glance left, and you were flying north, you would see the whole Lake Martin Swamp just overflowing its banks. And then you would see, if you look to the right, you could see the Catahoula, not the Catahoula, but the Barrow Channel that goes along the Tesh. That goes along the levee, overflowing its banks. So
Yep.
from the air, if you got high enough, you could see that those 2 areas just encroached with water, just full of water, and the Tesh Ridge just being high and dry the whole time. And probably one of the things that I've learned is
That might be where if we wanted to put a hurricane evacuation route, that might be the spot. to do
It proved it in this last rain. 30 inches of rain is a lot of rain. We've got some undocumented totals that total us right at 30 inches. Our 911 center, we have a very sophisticated gauge. We had a total of over 5 days, 30 inches of rain. And at the Lafayette Airport, I think there was a 25 inches of rain. At the Iberia Parish Airport, Acadiana Regional Airport, although you would think an airport that is southeast of us southwest of us shouldn't really be anything we would have to pay attention to, but there was 30 inches of rain recorded there.
Yeah.
But the way that hill is in Cade, all that water has to flow down toward the Terrace Highway and get into that Bayou Tortue and Cypress Island Swamp. So all the water that fell in Youngsville and where you saw those homes that had flash flooded ended up coming through Cypress Bayou, Coulee La Salle, and
Right into
parking
Cypress
itself,
Island Swamp.
parking itself in the Cypress Island Swamp for weeks. And
Then you have Bayou Vermilion roaring north
yeah,
at 10,000 cubic feet per second. This is according to Dr. David Cheramy, who was monitoring it.
sure.
And the fastest it's come going south is only like 2,000,
Yeah.
1/5. And you
Yeah.
say, wow, what's happening here, you know?
When we saw that, we monitor the gauge at Lake Martin. There's a gauge on the Vermilion at Lake Martin by the old Kingfish Club.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Where the Vermilion actually crosses. And my OEP director called me on the Friday afternoon about 4:30, and he said, "You're not gonna believe this, but I just left that area and the water's already flowing north." We had only got about 9 inches of rain at that particular point in time. At least, that was the Friday, at least at our 911 center, which as the crow flies is probably about 2 miles from that particular point. And that was the first time we've ever seen that river flowing north in that short period of time. And it just, again,
You see, you look at it, most of the time at that bridge, it doesn't flow north. It's still coming south. And at Coulee Crow and Bayou Black or Tortue,
yeah, starts
it
filling up.
pours into
Yeah,
that.
starts filling up that
But
swamp.
this was even overwhelming that.
Yeah,
was storm.
it totally overwhelmed that. And so we documented all that, and like I said, as far north as Orneville and up into Bayou Fusilier, although they didn't get a whole bunch of water up there, recorded data of about 17, 18, it's a lot of water, 17, 18 inches of rain, but they were getting backwater flooding, and people were saying, we didn't get that much rain for this to happen, but it was the Vermilion just flowing the wrong way. And the river's not supposed, in some cases, I would say that it has to flow north because of topography. If there's a hill and it's gonna push itself north.
Sure, yeah.
But
right.
but where it's
But
designed to flow south,
You look at the slope of the land, the airport at Lafayette and Oakmont Country Club, 48, 50 feet above sea level. Acadiana Mall, 5 miles to the south, is 21.
right, so
And,
there's
and so it drops like a
Yeah,
rock, you
yeah.
know, I mean, that's a heck of a drop.
yeah,
But the bayou's not doing that.
right,
And, this is very unscientific, but I just took my boat with a friend of mine that's been keeping up with this and going on some of my field trips and so forth. From St. Martin Parish, right at the airport.
okay,
By Tortue, to roughly right below General Mouton, that whole stretch, the water is 15 to 23 feet deep. When you get to Pinhook, you're at 13 feet. And from Pinhook Bridge to Rotary Point, now you're at 3.5 feet.
so you got a little bit of a
And
hill in
then, and then all the way to Elwha Broussard Bridge, you're at 7 to 10. And then when it starts sloping towards Vermilion Parish line, Coulee Yield to Cane, and it gets back to 14 or 15. But you got a hill there on the river, that's 8
Yeah.
or 10 miles.
If you can see it with a simple depth gauge, it's
Yeah,
probably,
I mean, the engineers really have to study that, and
yeah,
that's an easy solution, just dig that. And the
Sure.
bayou was dredged, 1949, I can remember, and I watched it. I was amazed at how they dredged it. They had a big old dredge that walked,
okay, neat,
and
neat,
it just dumped the spoil on the banks.
yeah,
And my guess is they dredged that bottom level.
right,
And so it didn't have the slope down that nature gave it.
sure,
And so that caused, that with just a level, flat plain, the river doesn't flow.
right.
So sediment drops out, fills out,
And it's not, at that point, it's not gonna affect just St. Martin Parish. You're gonna start seeing
Well,
homes flooding along the Vermilion. I know they had
Of
some.
course, absolutely.
And it's just gonna get
And-
worse unless something happens.
In 93, we looked at that briefly in the high water mark in 93. It was May of 93 at Surrey Bridge. It was 15.7. And at Ambassador, it was 17.9. It was 2 feet high, and everybody's scratching, how can that be? Well, when you go look at the bottom contour, the bottom's coming
The
way up.
bottoms, yeah,
No, the
sediment,
river can only go up.
Yep.
It's just,
silt and sediment. We
so
are-
if it's as simple, You know, in May of this year, Surrey Bridge got to 14.3.
That's right.
And, you know, August, it went to 18. That's not even 4-foot difference. But what a difference
And
it
all
made.
the problems it
And all
caused
the
with
problems
4
it
foot, right.
caused.
Yeah, 'cause
So
it-
if we could lower stages on the Vermilion 4 feet to 14, we've solved most of our flood
Yeah,
problems.
because in the May rain event that he speaks of, he's right. 14.3 is high at Surrey, but it didn't have a
Didn't
negative
flood
effect on us.
No.
Very little, if any at all, in Lafayette. So it's probably, what we hope to do is get the Corps engineer to study that. And we were getting, you know, everybody has their own opinion of how this could possibly be fixed. For 30 inches of rainfall, I'm not sure exactly what can be done, but
We'll
we gotta
still
start
have flood,
concentrating.
but
Yeah,
the
we gotta
point
start
is that-
concentrating on the
that-
10-inch rains and the 12-inch rains and the 15-inch rains. And if, I was getting people saying that the Bayou Teche needs to be dredged, but the Bayou Teche was rolling. I mean,
Oh, it
it was flowing really
Yes,
well.
yeah.
It was dropping much faster than the Vermilion was dropping. I
No
mean,
question about it.
tremendously faster.
Yeah, right.
And we would see the evidence of that when we get up in the air. Just looking at the simple method of the debris line on Bayou Teche, when you'd leave the Keystone locks, you know, because that's where it started dumping out first, of course, you know, because the bayou's designed to do that. The debris line might be, you know, 6 foot up on the bank after a week or so of the flood. And then when you got up toward Breaux Bridge and Cecilia and Orneville, the debris line got smaller,
Yeah.
but it was flowing.
Oh, yeah.
We'd fly over the Vermilion and Lafayette, and the
It was
debris
not
line was,
flowing.
I mean, it was inches instead of feet. And,
Because you have all that water pile up in Cypress Island.
yeah.
And it all has to go under the Surrey Bridge.
Yeah, there's no other way to.
No other way out. It all
put it,
goes out
yeah.
that way. It can't go north, so, and, you know, the big watershed, historically, and if you look at the map there.
Yeah, that's right behind you.
Alexandria, you know, Alexandria is way up here. The entire, you know, city of Alexandria doesn't drain into the Red River. It drains into the water system coming down by Cocodra and Bayou Buff and, or into the water, the system, the, Bayou Rouge and a bunch of those that drain into the Bar Pit Canal. But all that entire area is over 1 million acres. All ends up in Catawba. And then Catawba has a 3,200-foot channel. Bayou Teche is 720. It's 20% of this capacity. And the Vermilion is 240 feet. This is 20% of Catawba, and this is only about a third of Teche.
Right.
And so they're just, you know, if you try to put 50 gallons in a 5-gallon bucket, you're gonna have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So we got gates here that would put, this water got to 29 feet, 32 feet at Washington. At the time, the river is at 8. Historically, Bayou Catawba drained right into the Chafai River. If we had that same capacity, we'd lower stages all the way down.
Absolutely.
Bar Pit and everywhere.
That's the things we gotta start talking about. That's the solutions we gotta start looking for, because you're right.
Yeah.
Just this area from, that you talked about, from right here to right here is about 1 million acres.
Yes, sir.
Of property. That's just the top half.
Yeah.
So you're looking at this, it's probably another million. So the Teche Vermilion is probably a couple million acres of property that have to drain into a system that's either going Borrow Channel, Bayou Teche, or the Vermilion River. So we gotta start looking at solutions.
Sure, and put openings in the levee at
Yeah.
Catawba. We have one that's way too small, it's only 400 feet. It needs to be close to the capacity of this.
Right.
And then the Bar Pit should have the same capacity as the Teche. You put that all together and put another opening at Bayou Ami to relieve pressure on this whole system, because that's the historical flow. Bayou Ami flows well, and open up to where it used to go right into the basin.
Right.
Put gates in here, and, you know, and deal with this whole thing. You know, and the dam, the Keystone, that has to be looked at. That's a tough issue, because having it there probably helps people downstream, but you can't take the dam out, you know, because you have a real big problem with navigation, and navigation is a very important economic issue. So, if you put a gate inside the navigation lock, and then put in very stringent controls of when you can open it, how you can release that pressure. And everything that goes through here ends up going right here.
Right.
The water went to over 16 feet here, and at the gate here, the highest it got was 6'9", and the highest it got in the lake was 6'8". So, and then the highest it got in New Iberia was 6'8". Flood stage is 9, so New Iberia, even though they got 30 inches of rain, they didn't have a flood issue hardly at all, except on the west side of Iberia,
Yeah,
where
right.
Spanish Lake overflowed, well, Cypress Island
Yeah.
just overwhelmed the whole system.
Yeah, and I gotta say, having said that, I mean, I've been, by us putting together this meeting that you helped me actually, kind of assemble the parish leadership, everybody's been extremely supportive of how we move forward. We got a great group of leaders right now. Mayor President Robideau here, President Richard in Iberia, President Hannegriff in St. Mary, Mr. Bill Fondo in St. Landry, a civil engineer, very wise.
Hannegriff's an engineer
Got-
also.
Yeah, Hannegriff's has an engineering degree. Mr. Ronald Darby in the Vermilion Parish Police Jury has been very instrumental in helping us take a look at this. We also, while we were talking about how we do this, and he mentioned an important part where, and I was speaking to a group of retired school teachers today at lunch. I was their guest speaker, but when we dropped the levee in the 30s to protect us from any major floods, it had a negative impact in the way we drain. So we invited to the meeting the Iberia Parish Levee District, who is wanting to build some type of a levee system across their parish at the bottom side. The St. Mary Parish Levee District, who's wanting to do the same thing. And the folks in Vermilion are talking about joining up with Cameron and Calcasieu to build a levee. So we want them to be involved in our conversations as well, because what they do could possibly negatively impact the way we drain. And since we met, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago, those guys have probably called me the most and said, look, we're very, because they're in the baby steps of planning their levee systems, and they're very interested in not having a negative impact on anything north of them. So it's important that we get them involved in it as well. And I think, if we start having a conversation, that there's ways that we can possibly find solutions, and that's what we're looking for, just finding some solutions. They'll probably be costly. I mean, you're talking about cutting a levee, putting gates in it, but it's people's lives that we're talking about,
For the parish presidents attending in the first meeting, they reported how many homes, and all of them said they probably don't have them all, but between the parishes, we're looking at 12,000 homes.
Oh, yeah, it was millions of dollars of damages.
Mega millions of damage.
Yeah, millions and millions of dollars of damages. I know just
Somebody
my
can
parish
fix
alone.
their house for 50,000 and get new appliances and everything, they're fortunate.
Yeah.
So you put the numbers to that, the
Yeah.
disruption, a lot of beautiful new homes, people have mortgages, and, where do you scrape
Yeah.
up the resources to put 100,000 to fix it,
It's the unfortunate thing. I mean, we're guesstimating about 20% of our homes that were flooded, people had flood insurance, the other 80% didn't. So they're having to deal with, we're in the recovery stage now, and we're trying to help them deal with FEMA and as best as they can. And even in some cases, they're insurance companies. You pay that premium, and sometimes when they have to pay the claim, they want to make sure they check all the boxes. But at any rate, we're praying for those folks to get back on their feet as soon as possible. It's been a challenge, though. It has been. Our debris piles, we're still picking up debris in St. Martin Parish. We'll probably do that for another week or two. And just to see everybody's life sitting at the roadside in those areas,
So sad.
it's heartbreaking. It really is.
Yeah, and the people can't live in them
Yeah.
right now.
I gotta say that, though, Acadiana just proved itself one more time. Anytime we have something like this that happens to areas, we all come together and try to help. And there's been flood relief effort after flood relief effort, whether it be a concert or just people, the little lemonade stand was set up across the street from my office. Probably the kids were out of school for a week, so I would say maybe the Wednesday after this event happened on a Friday and a Saturday. And these young kids were just selling lemonade, and they were doing their part to try to help flood relief, at least some victims of the flood. And just to see that happening all over Acadiana was just amazing, and makes me proud to be from Acadiana, especially St. Martin
How many
Parish.
people cranked up their boats? And
Oh, yeah,
went
yeah.
and helped and rescued
yeah.
people, and
The Cajun Navy and all those guys that do that, and In our case, somebody had asked me, probably, I guess, a week or so into the event, Mr. Cormier, why don't y'all have a shelter opened up here? And I said it was amazing. I went and watched about 30, 35 rescues. People that were either stuck in their homes because the water had started to take it, or their cars just couldn't get out because the road had water in it. And so the sheriff department would go and get these people and as much belongings as they could put in a boat. And when they got to the road or the high ground, there was always a family member or a friend there to pick them up and said, you know what, you can stay with me as long as you need. And you'd see tears flow right there and people hugging. And I know I spoke to someone day before yesterday on Friday who's still living with his in-laws, and he says he has a new appreciation for his mother-in-law because he said he had kind of gotten to where they weren't talking a whole bunch, and then now he ended up sleeping with him, staying with him, and he said he said, I don't know if she's trying to make it good with me, but she washes, and she doesn't only fold my socks, but he said, I caught an iron in my socks the other day, so he said, things are good right now. So, but he's trying to rebuild. He's a guy that actually dropped his flood insurance about 2.5 years ago because his job had taken a hit. They didn't only reduce his salary he was getting paid, but the amount of hours he worked. And he took a look at everything that he had and all his bills, and he had been paying flood insurance for years and never used it, so decided to try to save that $1,500. He was in a flood zone, knew he was in a flood zone, but said, you know what, I don't have a mortgage on my house anymore, it's paid for, I'm gonna roll the dice, and here he is and got 2.5 foot of water in his house, and he's trying to rebuild as best as he can. So wow. I'm hearing story after story after story like that, and we're resilient people, but it's not fun being resilient. I mean, it's a call
from the Chapelli Levee Board. They're all excited about being there and be helpful in any way they can.
Yeah, and, absolutely. So that brings us to, I guess, how do we move forward? And I talked a little bit about it, but it's just getting the community involved and getting folks involved in how we fix this. I'm just a parish president. I don't claim to have all the solutions. That's going to take hydrologists and engineers to decide that. But I know what I saw, and there's a lot of folks in our community who saw something and want to document it.
You're not an expert witness, you're a witness.
I'm a witness, and I mean, Mr. Howell, I'm not picking on you or your age, but the guys in your generation that have paved the way for me are now, they were the first ones calling and saying, look, I've been here for this long, I never saw this before, and you can document that this is the first time this has happened since 1940, or
wow.
So it was pretty interesting to have those folks come and visit.
That history is real important.
It's amazing.
It's really important.
We have
a new high water mark, which is a new opportunity to look at what the Corps should have looked at 80 years ago.
Right.
And the ambition wasn't flooding outside the lake.
Right.
The ambition was to keep, the 1927 flood from happening again.
That's right.
That was their mission.
That's right.
And a lot of things, and a meeting in Fredericksburg in '93 over the same issue, the Corps said, we should have visited this, we should have looked at it better, right when the levees were finished.
Yeah.
And that's probably true for the other side, like Iberville and Point Coupee, they both on the Mississippi and the Chapelli. The Chapelli is 16 foot lower than the Mississippi.
Right.
So our opportunity is to dump it in the Chapelli system, and so is theirs.
Yeah.
And so that's why they feel there's so much common ground.
Sure. And at least in my parish, and I guess in how we move forward, we, years ago, the way we do drainage work in our parish, and to this day we do it using just local monies and local taxpayer money, and we hire people who run our excavators and dozers and all that. But not that long ago, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and even up to probably around 1989, it's about when they cut it off, you had three different ways to dig channels in your parish. You had the locals, which we still do. Then you had the state had a program called the Flood Management Program, or the Floodwater Management Program, that a parish police jury or parish government could fill out a 25-point application, submit it to the state. The state at the time had a Department of Public Works. It had its own equipment to do work throughout parishes and throughout the state. And you would get in line and you would work with your senator and your representative, and you would jockey with the governor, and they would do one of two things. They would come in and clean all those big channels for you, or they would give you funding to be able to get that contracted out to get it cleaned out. And then you had the feds also helping through things like NRCS and through the ag programs. And they would come in and dig all the big channels that pass through all the fields, which we all, as residents, drain through eventually. So you had 3 different groups of people working on drainage solutions. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the state's broke and the federal government's broker than and I don't even know if that's a word, but it's
Right.
broker than the state is.
Right.
And so there's no more flood management program at all that the state got rid of its Department of Public Works in 1989. And the feds still do some work with NRCS, but it's more about trying to reduce sediment and siltation, and they don't dig channels a whole bunch anymore. So they have put it on the locals to say, from now on, it's your baby. As recent as 1989, which is not that long ago. So what we decided to do in our parish, even before this flood event happened, we started thinking about ways that we can do major drainage work in our parish. And coincidentally, about 30 days before the flood happened, we got together with our council and decided we were going to call an election at our September 6th meeting. We would actually call the election at the September 6th meeting for a December 10th election that would take monies that were once, bond monies that were once the people of my parish passed to be able to build libraries. They did that in the 80s. And we built some libraries and we got our libraries in shape. And then in 2004, we paid the debt off. And I became parish president in 2004. In 2005, I went to the people and said, our next major need is our courthouse. It was in deplorable shape and we needed to do something with it. So we went ahead and we renewed or rededicated that bond issue for courthouse improvements. And we did, some $8, $9 million, $10 million worth of courthouse improvements. And if you come to St. Martin Parish, we're very proud of our antebellum courthouse.
Beautiful.
It's a gorgeous facility, and we built a council on aging building with the money, and we built a new building for the clerk, the register of voters, and an assessor. And we paid that debt off early. We took a 20-year bond issue, and in 11 and a half years, we paid the final note to save our taxpayers the interest,
right.
and to see if we could rededicate this money to do drainage and recreation, because that's where our 2 major needs are from this point forward. So we had determined prior to this event happening that we were going to do about $20 million worth of drainage work and about $5 million worth of recreation work. Now, $20 million worth of drainage work is a lot of drainage work in my parish. 100% of that money, if we rededicate that money, if the voters go and rededicate that money, that money will be spent to totally contract services out to get these companies that have these big long reach excavators, because we don't have that, and drag lines, and start cleaning up things like, the Cypress Island Coulee, the Jodeg Canal, stuff we mentioned when we talked about the flood earlier, Bayou Tartu, going up into Orneville, Bayou Pont Brûlé, the Magenta Canal, all the way where it dumps into Bayou St. Clair, the other side where the Portage Guidry that drains pretty much all of Breaux Bridge. Because when you look at the Tesh Ridge, we talked about that earlier, when you look at the Tesh Ridge, there's a very small portion of each city, starting at St. Martinville. All of our major cities are basically built, with the exception of Henderson, but built along the Tesh. So you have St. Martinville, then you have Parks, then you have Breaux Bridge, then you have the community of Cecilia, then the community of Orneville. But the majority of those cities drain away from the Tesh.
Absolutely.
So
And there's no coulees that cross the Tesh Ridge.
that's exactly right.
It all goes away into the swamp.
That's exactly right.
and So that has to be kept efficient.
So we're gonna spend that $20 million opening up those major channels that bring it to the Barrow Channel Canal and the Vermilion.
Yes.
And
Yep.
and so hopefully, and I'm gonna go do a road tour starting around November 1st, not to be confused with the November 8th election, because this election won't be till December 10th. But I'll do a road show with a PowerPoint presentation to anybody who wants to hear me, and see if we can just give them facts and let the people decide. And again, it's not a new tax. We're already paying it. We're just gonna rededicate it. It was once for libraries, then for courthouse, and now it'll be for drainage and recreation. We'll have a specific list of what we're gonna be doing, listed by channels and what we're gonna do, the areas in which we're gonna work in, and we'll do the same thing with our Parks and Recreation program. And hopefully, if the people decide that they wanna do something, within the next 3 or 4 years in St. Martin Parish, you're gonna see a lot of digging in our parish and some improvements to take care of those 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch rains. I'm not saying this is for a 30-inch rain, because I don't know if anybody could predict something. It just
That's
depends
right.
how fast it falls. I often talk about Tropical Storm Allison because it came at the very beginning of when I was starting my public service career, and that dumped 22 inches in St. Martin Parish, but it was over an 8-day period. And I often reflect back and say, man, but for Tropical Storm Allison, this happened. Well, that storm is, and I don't discount it, but it's in my mind, I'll never forget it, but it's almost like a baby storm now, because this was an unnamed storm, but dumped that much water on us within 48 hours. So we're gonna try to position ourselves to be able to take care of ourselves, to drain a little bit better than we have in the past. There's no doubt about it. When the feds took away the money for us to dig big channels, and the state did away with their public works department and their flood control program, that we didn't do a whole bunch because we didn't have the equipment and manpower to get it done with local taxpayer money. But we're gonna do it if it passes, so.
As part of this involves recreation, and I have to share with the audience your help with the bike trail. My scout troop was working on building a bike trail. Big thing in biking now is gravel crunching, running the back roads, the country
Sure,
roads,
yeah.
where it's thought safer than, Interstate 10 to bike on. And so anyway, the issue was, getting signs put up and, getting it mapped and so forth, and getting permission from the levee boards. And your office, you in particular, was the first step in getting all the signs set up. And
Yeah.
guys in Eagle Scouts, so this was an Eagle project. So when you of St. Martin Parish took the lead, we'd get help from Iberia, because we went to Iberia. We'll
Sure.
say, all right, y'all need 11 signs. St. Martin needed 24.
Right.
And then we went to St. Mary, and of
Yeah.
course the same story. They said, well, if St. Martin Iberia is doing it, we're going to do it too,
Yeah,
So
sure.
the scout was all excited about getting that done. So we have a 55-mile bike trail that starts close to I-10 and goes all the way to Calumet.
Yeah.
And there's not a stop sign. It's all on the top of the levee. It is for bikes and hikers and horseback riders,
Yeah.
non-motorized vehicles. St. Mary Parish Levee Board put gates where a horse or a bike or a hiker can go through but a car can't, or an
Yeah, sure.
ATV can't. So
Right.
it's all to make the road safe and to kind of emphasize that Country Roads has a feature article
Sure.
on that trail coming up. So
Well, good.
you'll able to
Awesome.
see more visitors coming to take that beautiful ride on the levee.
Yeah.
You're on the top where the scenery is just wonderful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and you're right. More people are getting into that mountain bike stuff. They want those more rugged bikes than the little road bikes that you see a lot of people riding on. And when you came over with the little Eagle Scout who was doing the project, I couldn't help fast enough, because I've been there and done that, and I know what it's like to have to do a project
Well,
and find something that
To be a
helps.
16-year-old to
Yeah.
go up against the parish council and,
Yeah.
ask for help.
He did a
was-
fantastic
yeah,
job.
He did
yeah.
do a great
Yeah,
job.
did a good
I'm
job,
proud
and
of it, yeah.
I appreciate you
And
still
there
being
was another
involved.
Eagle project y'all helped on.
Litter abatement at the boat
Litter
launches.
abatement at boat launches. We noticed in St. Mary Parish, they had the best system. If they put a bin, it overflowed because everybody bring their household garbage there.
Right.
But they were using 55-gallon drums, and they used 4 of them, and one of them's for recycling, and the rest of them are garbage. And they don't abuse these things. These things really work well.
Sure.
I went by Buffalo Cove Landing there, and to Dotree Landing, and both of those, those bins were in order, and there was no litter around at all.
Sure.
Which is saying a lot for the sportsmen. They using that opportunity to do the right thing, and the one at Butler Rose is probably the one used the most, and that's amazing how clean that stays.
Yeah, absolutely. We go we go twice a week, but Mondays is our busy day to pick up garbage at the landings, because our landings are
weekends, yeah.
frequented so much on weekends. But yeah, it's worked out good for us, and I appreciate your involvement in scouting, and to this day
Well, the St. Martin Parish has been a lot of help to us.
yeah,
So,
sure.
and of course, there've been tree planting all over the basin, and, in fact, we camped in there last night. Boy, did we feed the mosquitoes.
Oh yeah, the mosquitoes are horrendous right now. We're doing.
Everybody was in their tents by 7 o'clock.
Yeah, sure. I could about imagine. we talked a little bit about hurricane evacuation, and I want to mention just a project that we're trying to get. We're trying to get at least the state to take a look at, although there's been a lot of focus and attention on I-49 South, and St. Martin Parish is all for building something that we can get in and get on in Shreveport and travel all the way to New Orleans without any interruptions and making interstate standards all the way. But we often talked about possibly just a kind of I guess an eastern loop off of that system that would pass through St. Martin Parish, maybe
On the
enter
Test
in
Ridge.
on the Test Ridge itself, maybe enter in around the Cade area on the hill,
Yes.
follow itself down on the Test Ridge itself.
There is a hill between Cade and the Test Ridge.
That's right, and follow its way down all the way to where we can connect up to I-10 somewhere, or maybe a little bit even past that. So we want to at least start a conversation about some type of a highway system that can be placed for not just the bypass, but for a hurricane evacuation route as well. If somebody has to get on it to be able to get people out. And we just think it, especially in this last rain event, it makes sense because you heard me say earlier, the only way you could get to Lafayette would if you from New Iberias, you had to jump on either Highway 31 or 347, which follow the Tesh all the way up to Breaux Bridge.
I needed to go to Sycamore at the height of the flood and went to Breaux Bridge, Parks, across the bike Parks, all of the Test Ridge to Darnell Road. Never had water on the road, driving 55 miles an
That's
hour
right.
the whole way,
Yeah.
going and coming.
That's right.
So absolutely. I mean,
So-
this is a gift that we have.
Yeah, it's a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
We saw it, and this was an unnamed storm, but maybe a hurricane will dump it on us next time. But we know that whole ridge stayed dry the
And
whole
when
time.
182, it cut through the road.
Yeah,
I mean, they
it
had
sure
to
did.
dump
It peeled the asphalt right off
the
the top
asphalt
of it in
right
St.
up.
Martin
Yeah.
Parish. So
And they had to slow traffic down to 10 miles an hour
Yeah.
and fill it up with gravel.
Yep.
Oh.
So anyway, just in one of those things that you think about, we're talking about flooding and about drainage, but one of those things we can learn about from this event is that ridge itself stayed high, and
You think of a hurricane, if this would have come before hurricane evacuation, what a
Yeah.
calamity it would be.
yeah,
Now, I have to
Right.
share with you, I was on a camping trip during Hurricane Katrina with my scouts down at Miette Point in Grand Lake. And then cars were piling up, helicopter was flying everywhere. And my scout says, "Mr. Shuffle, how are we gonna get back?" I said, "I think we'll just go up the Levee Road." So, the Levee Road was fine. We took out at Miette Point, came
Sure.
up the levee all the way to Calhoun, took the back roads. And,
Came in with
right there, I realized that should be hard surface all the way
Yeah.
to Franklin.
absolutely.
And there would be two lanes, one way during hurricane evacuation. That brings you right to I-10.
Yeah, no doubt.
And the simple, it can't be too expensive. It's already gravel, so you're
Sure.
not building a new road.
Yeah, it's built on a levee system, so
Yeah.
it's high.
Yeah.
It's designed to
Oh,
be that
yeah.
way. It's not gonna go in the water.
Right,
So the portion that is done from,
And there's
Henderson all the way to
50 miles without a stop sign.
yeah, to Lake Forest Point's very nice. If
Yeah.
you can just go a little bit further than that, it would sure be nice and provide for some access for hurricane evacuation as well. So, one of those things that we hope
And
to
it
have.
would help tourism and people enjoy the basin better.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely,
And
yeah.
I noticed, and I was somewhat concerned about this project, is Lake Dotree, I guess where Bayou Portage is the lake, and it's hard to tell where the bayou and the lake separate. They kind of gradually opens up.
Sure,
But you were involved in dredging that thing, and the big issue is often, what do you do with the spoil?
yeah.
And, because you can picture the big cypress tree and being whacked with, 20 feet of dirt and mud. But that was put way back in a cane field.
We got pretty creative with it. It was piped about 2 miles from the channel itself into a large field, 40 acres, almost a perfect square, but a 40-acre tract of land. And proof that, and I'll tell you, proof that when you have a hill inside of a system, it causes problems. Before we dredged it, and we would have gotten the rain we got, the community of Bayou Portage and Coda Homes, all the way up to a little area we call.
That are going underwater.
Yeah,
Let me tell you how shallow that thing was. It was so shallow on canoe trips, we had canoes dragging bottom.
That's
Now, a
right.
canoe can float in a heavy dew. I mean, 2 inches
Yeah.
you can float, and we were amazed when we were going through this super shallow. It's soft stuff, but it's still hard to go through.
we spent $2 million. We dredged out from where the channel itself dumps into the lake, a good portion into the lake, and at the same time we were there, we put a sediment trap for future use to where we can just maintain the sediment trap. We did that for, like I said, $2 million. It was a shared project with Iberia Parish. We have another $3 million of monies that we applied for, that we received grant monies that were derived from Hurricanes Gustav and Ike. We'll be doing another $3 million worth of work on the channel going north. But this last rain event, we had minimal or no problems in that area because we took the hill
Yeah,
out.
Absolutely.
And-
That's what we have on the Vermilion, we have a big hill.
Yeah, so when you talked about your simple sonaring in a boat, I mean, those things are sophisticated nowadays. I mean, and you prove that there's a hill somewhere
There's
around Rotary Point and
7, 8
whatnot.
miles of very shallow water.
It's gonna
and
make a difference if you knock that out
Knock
just
that out.
3 or
Oh,
4 foot.
gosh.
I mean, you're talking about
Absolutely.
tremendous difference.
Difference in lowering, not only lowering the Vermilion here, but Cypress Island,
Absolutely, yeah.
because it is pouring into Cypress Island.
Right, you are right about that. You
We have a
are-
phone call? Okay. So, but if those are the solutions that, are not expensive. I
Sure.
mean, dredging, compared to the flooding that occurred, if you could lower stages in the Vermilion 3 feet, and
It
that
would-
would translate right to Cypress Island.
Absolutely,
I mean,
yeah, you're right.
You're knocking out probably 99% of the flooded homes.
Yeah, yeah. And you said it was last dredged in 1949.
Yeah,
Imagine,
1949.
I mean, think about
Wow.
how much growth there's been just on that system, right on the system. I'm talking about on the Vermilion system, on the
In
Bayou
extensive
Vermilion
bulkhead.
or Vermilion River, depending upon who you talk to. But, and they keep building on it. And granted, we as government officials, we design or we plan these things, and we have these developers come and we say, okay, you have to build a retention area designed for a 10 or a 20-year event. And they do as best as they can to do that. But when they put concrete in these fields, I was telling this group that I spoke to today, my oldest son is 26 years old. He was born at Women's and Children's Hospital, and I can remember looking out the hospital window and seeing everything with the exception of St. Thomas More, just soybean fields. And at the
yeah.
time we were
Wheat
farming.
fields,
Yeah, we
yeah.
were farming sugarcane, so it was all fields right there. And how all that's pretty much concrete, and they keep, I passed there yesterday, and right against the Vermilion, I didn't think there was any more room to put anything else
Oh, the big
past the
old-
Whole Foods and the academies, but there's 2 other things going on, like right on the banks.
by
And
Academy.
so
Yeah.
we as society keeps overbuilding on a system that can't handle it already. And until we try to get a grip on it, we're just gonna continue to have problems. And
Yeah,
the
that's-
Youngsvilles and all those areas that just, where the water can't come out fast enough are gonna continue to flood because of just,
And, so important that, one, the Corps is very enthusiastic about supporting this effort, and mainly because so many of the parishes have pulled together.
yeah, you're right, Mr. Howell. I've been there and I've asked the Corps, even the state, when you go just by yourself and you're just one parish and you're asking for funding for something, they try as best as they can to give it to you. But I've been in government 17 years now, and I've figured one thing out: if you can ask for something collectively and get a bigger group asking for it,
Oh,
they're gonna
gosh.
pay attention to
They
you a little
have
bit
to,
more.
look how many
So,
voters, how much
yeah,
damage.
right.
and all
So
this.
that's why I say if we can get some type of an Acadiana drainage district,
Well,
and,
okay.
for
Yeah,
lack of a better word, just
Catch Vermilion drainage
Yeah,
district is, you
to
talk
where
about
we're asking
everything
for
from
it.
Rapides
Yeah,
Parish on down.
we're asking for it all together. Our chances of getting funding are going to be a lot better than it would be if I went and asked for it, or President Robideau would go and ask for it, or President Hannah Griffin St. Mary. If we all collectively asking for something to help, for some help, I think they'll
And
pay
you see,
attention
it
to
was
us.
great that David Handegrift, the president of St. Mary, came, because They weren't hurt by this, they didn't have
No.
a flood at home.
Right.
But he's an engineer, and he did the design work on that floodgate at Cross Springs.
Mm-hmm.
So he's thoroughly familiar with the system, you
Yeah.
know, and his input becomes real important.
Absolutely, absolutely. All those people, and I can't say enough for even about the folks that just everyday people who are in those areas much more than I am. We often lean on the crawfishermen in the basin to determine what's the problems inside the basin. They're there every day.
Oh,
They see it, they feel
watch
it, they touch it, they watch it, they.
They know
So
when the water's bad, all
it's-
that crawfish die.
right. It's the same thing if you're going in Cypress Island for me to talk to the elderly people who live there for a long time to say, okay, what did you see this time that you hadn't seen in the past? And try to gather that as best as we can to come up, help the Corps or somebody else, or hydrologists, find solutions to.
I grew up hunting in that swamp, and we were about 11 or 12 years old, and we had taken our bikes and had gone to the Forks and had my cousin, who was in the Air Force, gave us a little rubber raft. So we blew it up with our mouth, and we crossed the bayou, and we hunted squirrels all day long. About noon, we're about ready to head back, and we found a crashed plane.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man, what are we gonna do with this? And we were way past Lake Charlotte towards Broussard. And so how do you find this thing again? So, I mean, really tough. You have to wander around Lake Charlotte, cross Bayou Capucin.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly
So,
where you were.
we figured the only way we could really find it is if we took a line and we'd take the sheet metal and tie it up in the trees all the way to the south, and we'd put the airframe material to the north, and we made a 200-yard line parallel to the railroad track between Lafayette and Broussard. And then we hiked out. We put a big old piece right above the plane site. And there was two big holes with sheet metal everywhere. We figured it was a twin-engine plane, So we hiked out. We got hunting bags full of bloody squirrels and all 410s, and went to the airport terminal, And the first thing those guys said, "Oh, y'all will never find it again." "Oh no, we're Boy Scouts. We know exactly what we do, And we're 12 years old. My brother's 11, and so before long, you had about the sheriff's department, the state police, the civil air people, and 8 or 10 guys following 2 little kids, and we went right to it.
Wow,
We didn't miss
amazing, amazing story.
And then, of course, we had to hike out back to our bike,
Yeah.
which was almost dark when we got out. But it turned out that this was an F-86 from England Air Force Base
Okay.
that had flamed out and made a dead stick landing, no engine running, had to drop his full fuel tanks. And that's what we found. The full
Oh,
fuel tanks
whoa.
kind of exploded when they hit.
Gotcha.
So, anyway, so we're getting close to the end. Guy,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. We're,
Well, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you allowing me to come and speak to the public.
Well,
Again, I don't have all the answers or much at all.
Your
but-
secretary was wonderful, because I was kind of concerned. She said, "Well, if he doesn't call you, he's gonna come," So, okay.
Yeah.
So I'll trust in her, and my trust was well placed.
Well, she sent me a reminder this afternoon that I needed to be here, and I had been on the road since this morning speaking
And
with folks
I
about
want to
it.
thank you again for all your help in pulling this together, hosting the meeting, chairing the meeting. And I think it was outstanding that you gave the public ample opportunity to participate and be a part of it. You dedicated 15 minutes of that meeting, and the Corps is there with their staff people, so it's very, very well done, very well run. The public had opportunity. It was well noticed in the press. So again, that meeting's coming up.
Yeah, I want to remind people,
The 24th at 10
24th
in the
October,
morning.
10 a.m. at Vermilionville.
Vermilionville.
Public is more than welcome to come. We will have a segment toward the end to have public comment, and we want your participation. The only way we're going to learn things from this event is by you. So we want you to come and participate with us.
And it's probably not many of us are expert witnesses in this field, but we are witnesses.
Right.
And we looked at new high water marks, and places that never had water, never had a problem, went under this time. And it affects agriculture, it affects homes, it affects schools, people lost their lives. This disruption of the economy is just horrendous,
Yeah.
So if this is an opportunity to look at it real hard, see if we can figure it out. If we can move forward and get the things done that we can do to lower these stages, I think that can be done. So thank you again, God.
I'm
for
right there
being
with
here.
you, man. I
Yes,
want to help where we can, so. I just want to thank all the public for just your kind
Hopefully,
words.
we can quit sending Lafayette's flood to
Oh,
St.
no,
Martin.
it's not about that. It's not about that. If I sounded frustrated, it's not, I probably am a little bit, but I just think we need to communicate, and we'll do that.
But I was convinced there was a big plug at, Vermillion line, and there
Yeah.
wasn't. But there is a big plug in it, so,
Sure. Well,
and it just may take redressing.
we'll see. We'll see.
All right.
But again, thank you for having me.
All
I
right, thanks for
appreciate
all
it.
your
and,
help, with the scouts and our
looking forward to-
garbage pickup and our bike trail.
Yeah.
The great things that help the community.
All right. Well, thank you, Katie Ann. I appreciate y'all tuning in to me and Mr. Howell's show, and
Right.
appreciate y'all.
Come to the meeting.